Hello everyone and welcome back to DET Coach's Beginner's Guide to the Duolingo English Test. In the previous lesson, we learned a writing sample template for descriptive and explanatory prompts. In this lesson, we'll move on to opinion and argument prompts. When you see words and phrases such as choose, evaluate, agree or disagree, compare or should, the prompt usually asks you to choose, evaluate, or compare an approach. This lesson introduces a template that works for either-or questions as well as agree or disagree and should questions that ask you to evaluate a single approach. First, look at the sample prompt in the lesson materials. Some companies allow employees to work from home, while others require everyone to work in the office. Which policy is better for teamwork? Give reasons and examples. The prompt asks you to choose clearly between a work-from-home policy and an office-based policy. The evaluation criterion is teamwork. Here we'll argue that office-based work is better for teamwork. The central reason is that regular face-to-face discussion can reduce delays and make responsibilities easier to coordinate. The specific situation, practical consequence, counter-argument, and response that follow must all support this position. If you discuss only whether commuting is convenient without explaining which policy is better for teamwork, you have not addressed the prompt's main evaluation criterion. The first paragraph of the template introduces the issue, establishes the evaluation criterion, and immediately states the position and central reason. Questions about topic or claim are best evaluated in terms of main criterion. From this perspective, I maintain that position, primarily because central reason. For topic or claim, you can use a noun phrase or a whether clause to summarize the issue in the prompt accurately. For main criterion, use a noun phrase that identifies the standard behind your judgment. Both position and central reason should express complete ideas. First state which side you support, then use one central reason to tell the reader why. By the end of the first paragraph, the reader should know what you are comparing, the criterion you are using, and your conclusion. The second paragraph applies the central reason to a specific situation. This reasoning becomes concrete when specific example or situation. In that context, practical consequence. As a result, the argument remains specific rather than purely theoretical. Fill specific example or situation with a complete clause that can follow when. Explain who needs to take what action and under what circumstances. Fill practical consequence with a complete clause explaining what actually happens in that situation and how it supports the earlier reason. Do not simply write, for example, and then restate your position. The situation, action, and consequence must form an observable cause and effect chain. The third paragraph acknowledges a reasonable counterargument, then explains why the original position still stands. A reasonable objection is counterargument or limitation. Even so, response or condition. After considering this limitation, the initial judgment remains persuasive. For counterargument or limitation, usually use a DET clause describing a genuine concern or limitation the other side might raise. For response or condition, use a complete clause that either offers a solution or explains the conditions under which the limitation can be controlled. A concession does not overturn your position. After the response, the conclusion must still return to the evaluation criterion from the first paragraph. Now fill the template with details about office-based teamwork. The topic or claim is whether employees should work from home or in the office. The evaluation criterion is the speed and clarity of team communication. The position is office-based work is generally more effective for teamwork. The central reason is regular face-to-face discussion reduces delays and makes responsibilities easier to coordinate. The specific situation is a design team has to revise a proposal shortly before a client meeting. The practical consequence is members can compare ideas immediately, divide tasks, and correct mistakes before the deadline, while questions are resolved as soon as they arise. The counterargument is that commuting and office interruptions can reduce individual concentration, especially during complex tasks. The response is companies can offer flexible hours and provide quiet rooms for focused work without reducing time for productive collaboration. Together, the 8 slots form one argument. Establish the criterion, state the position, use a situation to support the reason, and then respond to a genuine limitation. Now listen to the complete model response. Questions about whether employees should work from home or in the office are best evaluated in terms of the speed and clarity of team communication. From this perspective, I maintain that office-based work is generally more effective for teamwork, primarily because regular face-to-face discussion reduces delays and makes responsibilities easier to coordinate. This reasoning becomes concrete when the design team has to revise a proposal shortly before a client meeting. In that context, members can compare ideas immediately, divide tasks, and correct mistakes before the deadline, while questions are resolved as soon as they arise. As a result, the argument remains specific rather than purely theoretical. A reasonable objection is that commuting and office interruptions can reduce individual concentration, especially during complex tasks. Even so, companies can offer flexible hours and provide quiet rooms for focused work, without reducing time for productive collaboration. After considering this limitation, the initial judgment remains persuasive. The fixed sentences organize the logic. What truly determines the quality of the response is whether the 8 slots contain specific details and remain focused on the same evaluation criterion throughout. This completes our coverage of writing sample response methods and the 3 prompt templates. I'll see you in the next lesson.